What if events went differently? And just seconds before the Joker's crowbar fell for a final time, a red and yellow blur tore through time, changing everything. What if Wally West, the fastest man alive, arrived just in time to save Jason Todd from his tragic fate? Welcome back, fellow watchers of the multiverse. My name is Max Charlebois, aka MissedThePart, and Flash Week continues with one of our most emotional crossovers yet. In this alternate timeline, Wally senses a ripple in the Speed Force, tied to the death of the second Robin. With his heart still aching from past losses, he races to change fate. But saving Jason isn't just about stopping the Joker. It means confronting Batman, breaking the timeline, and dealing with a version of Jason who never died but never fully healed either. This story explores legacy, trauma, and what happens when one hero risks everything to save another, because sometimes the fastest thing in the world is hope. And this entire story arc and Flash Week itself was made possible by Ian Coyne, one of our incredible supporters through the monthly Watcher tier. Through this tier, Ian collaborated directly with us to build out an entire week of Flash-centered What If content, and you can too. When you become a monthly watcher, you get more than just early access. You get to work with us behind the scenes, help shape weekly themes, pitch stories, and see them developed into full episodes live on the channel. There's no competition, just community. A growing family of watchers building everything, creativity, storytellers, everything in between, and I can't thank you guys enough. But that being said, fire up the Speed Force, charge into Gotham, and rewrite a moment that changed the Bat family forever. This is What If Wally West Flash saved Jason Todd. Let Flash Week race on. The wind howled through the desolate, sun-scorched hills of Ethiopia, carrying with it dust, heat, and the faint scent of metal. The air itself felt hostile, as though the land were complicit in the sins being committed within its borders. Somewhere far from the vigilante heartbeat of Gotham City, Jason Todd was alone, his voice silenced by isolation, and his judgment clouded by a desperate yearning to know the woman who had brought him into the world and then vanished from it. Sheila Haywood, his biological mother, had finally been found, but instead of comfort, Jason found a trap, and at the center of it stood madness incarnate, the Joker. Inside the battered warehouse, flickering fluorescent lights swung from the ceiling like gallows. Jason, bruised and bloodied, clung to consciousness as the Joker finished his symphony of violence, each crowbar swing a punctuation mark on the villain's joyless monologue. Sheila sobbed nearby, bound and helpless, her face etched with the kind of regret that only comes after the point of no return. She had betrayed her son to the Joker in exchange for protection, only to realize far too late that deals with devils have no honor. The Joker's pale face twisted into a sneering grin as he primed the bomb, its timer now ticking down. 30 seconds, 20, 10, but something else stirred. Thousands of miles away, Wally West, the third Flash and the successor to Barry Allen, felt a ripple in the Speed Force, a sharp radioactive distortion like a needle to the spine. He'd been tracking stolen Wayne tech through Central and Northern Africa, his instincts already leading him toward whispers of a black market operation involving miniature nuclear payloads. But this wasn't just theory anymore. His molecules vibrated with dread. Something was wrong. Wally launched himself across the continent in a crimson blur. The world blurred around him, time slowing with every footfall. As he neared the coordinates, he saw the warehouse just as the explosion began to detonate. An eruption of fire and steel blossoming outward like a blooming star. He broke the sound barrier, then the light barrier. Time bent. In a fraction of a second, Wally raced into the inferno. He saw Jason and Sheila, mere silhouettes against the blinding core of the explosion. No time to think. He grabbed both of them in a split-second motion, wrapping his body around theirs and pushing his speed beyond safe limits. The heat seared through his suit. The warehouse collapsed behind him as he launched through a hole in the roof, the fireball barely licking their heels. When he stopped, they were half a mile away, sprawled in the sand. Jason was alive, barely. Sheila, less so. Her injuries were fatal, and she died minutes later in Jason's arms, sobbing apologies he didn't have the strength to respond to. Wally stood nearby, exhausted. The soles of his boots melted, the red lightning still crackling faintly around him. His chest heaved. He'd made it in time, but it had been too close. Within the hour, Batman arrived, summoned by a silent alarm embedded in Jason's suit. The Batwing descended like a bird of judgment, and when Bruce saw Wally standing beside his broken partner, his jaw tightened behind the cowl. The boy was breathing. That should have been enough. But Bruce wasn't a man made of softness. What the hell was he doing here alone? Bruce growled, his voice low, full of fury and guilt. Wally stepped between them. He was trying to save someone, and I got to him before the bomb did. You're welcome, by the way. Batman didn't respond at first. The silence between them was heavier than the desert heat. Finally, Bruce turned and knelt beside Jason, who stirred weakly and muttered something about not being fast enough. Bruce's hands, usually precise and methodical, trembled slightly as he picked him up. Back in Gotham, the fallout began. Jason underwent surgery for internal bleeding, fractured ribs, and minor spinal trauma. He healed quickly, physically at least. Mentally, the trauma was a storm he kept bottled. When he was finally released from the medbay in the Batcave, his eyes were different, more alert, more cold. Not unfeeling, but changed, hardened. Bruce, as expected, grew distant. He didn't shout, he didn't comfort. He observed, and he calculated. He silently began adjusting Jason's training regimen, testing him more rigorously. Was he still fit to be Robin? Had his fear eclipsed his usefulness? Jason noticed the shift and didn't complain. He only trained harder. But Wally came back. First, it was casual, a few check-ins. Then sparring sessions, then missions. Jason didn't say it, but he was grateful. Wally was the only person who didn't treat him like he was glass, like he had failed. In fact, Wally told him the opposite. You didn't lose. You survived something most of us couldn't, Wally had said, walking alongside him on a rooftop. That makes you stronger than me. Jason scoffed. Yeah, right. You outran a nuclear explosion. And you didn't break afterward, Wally replied. You're the toughest guy I know. A bond formed, more than mentor and mentee, more than sidekicks. They were brothers born from trauma, each carrying a legacy, too heavy for their age. And in that bond, Jason found a new strength. Meanwhile, the Joker vanished. The world assumed he had perished in the explosion, but Bruce knew better. Joker wanted to disappear, and the fact that he believed Jason was dead meant that, for now, the monster would move on. But Gotham didn't pause. New threats emerged. Two-Face resurged in the Narrows. A venom-enhanced Black Mask made a play for the Iceberg Lounge. Jason wanted in on all of it. Bruce held him back, until one night Jason snuck out. He didn't wear the Robin suit. He wore black and white, tactical, streamlined, prototype gear Wally had helped design. He stopped a gun shipment without throwing a single punch. He disarmed, disoriented, and disabled the crew in 28 seconds. He left them tied up with the word Mockingbird burned into the dock wood beneath them. Just a test. Bruce found out, but instead of punishing him, he said nothing, because in his heart, he knew. The boy was becoming something else, and it was working. The rooftops of Gotham City whispered differently now. Jason Todd, no longer just the second Robin, no longer just the boy who cheated death, was beginning to make his own noise, his own myth, and the city was listening. In the months following the failed assassination at the hands of the Joker, Jason had changed. Not in the way Bruce feared. There was no brooding retreat, no bloodthirsty revenge streak. Instead, there was focus, precision. He began to define his own rhythm in the shadows, moving with the training Batman had drilled into him, but lacing it with his own brand of creativity. Sometimes theatrical, sometimes brutally efficient, and above all else, quietly independent. With Wally West's steady influence, Jason's recovery had morphed into transformation. The two met weekly, sometimes on rooftops, sometimes at dive diners that didn't care who sat in the corner booth in a red hoodie and a speedster suit. Wally didn't preach, he didn't guide from a pedestal. He shared stories about Barry, about loss, about what it meant to live in someone else's shadow and still find your own color in the light. Jason soaked it in. Slowly, the bitterness he once felt toward Bruce, toward the weight of the Robin mantle, softened. Meanwhile, Jason took on more missions outside Gotham. Bloodhaven, Keystone, Dakota City. He trained with Nightwing on agile tactics, patrolled alongside Wally in lightning raids, and even took down a trafficking ring in Metropolis without being noticed by Superman. He wore a different suit for these runs, one Wally helped design with Star Labs tech, sleek matte black with white gauntlets, and winged shoulders that shimmered silver in the light. No cape, no insignia. Not yet. But when he left calling cards, he started signing them. Mockingbird. Batman noticed. Of course he did. But rather than confront Jason, Bruce adapted, assigning him missions that required stealth, misdirection, and miscommunication. Jason excelled. He wasn't Robin anymore. But Bruce didn't stop him. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was pride. Back at the manor, the Bat family subtly adjusted around the shifting dynamics. Barbara Gordon, recovering emotionally from the Killing Joke, found herself increasingly drawn into Jason's orbit. The two trained together in the gym, sometimes sparring, sometimes just talking. She hadn't put the Batgirl suit back on in years, but something about Jason's resolve, his refusal to give in to what could have broken him, stirred something in her. When she asked what he was trying to become, he shrugged and said, "A shadow that sings louder than the scream." She smiled. It was poetic, tragic, and undeniably Jason. Tim Drake in this timeline watched from a distance. Still a prodigious mind, he uncovered the identities of Batman and Robin, but saw no void to fill, no need for a third Robin. So instead, Tim chose a different path. In this reality, he turned his genius toward the digital world, a future tech advisor, an oracle in training. Not a sidekick, but a quiet guardian behind the screen. But Gotham has a rhythm, and it never forgets a tune. The Joker returned. It was almost operatic. Reports of people laughing themselves to death. A fear toxin laced with Joker venom. Streets painted in cartoonish blood. And at the center of it, a message scrawled on the Gotham Theater marquee. "I forgive you, Robin." Batman tightened the city's patrol grid. Oracle activated deep surveillance. But Jason wanted in. When he brought it up in the cave, Bruce shut it down. "You're not ready," Batman said without looking at him. "This isn't your fight." Jason didn't argue. He just left. Later that night, Wally found him on the edge of Gotham's theater district, crouched above the glowing streetlights in full Mockingbird gear. "You're going anyway," Wally said, leaning on the rooftop edge beside him. "Wouldn't be much of a story if I didn't," Jason replied, his jaw tight. "I'll back you up. But we do this smart. We do this fast." They infiltrated the Joker's hideout beneath the derelict theater. It wasn't just another clown lair. It was a twisted funhouse of reflection, a place where mirrors screamed and laughter echoed through long-forgotten speaker systems. And in the center, the Joker waited, alive, giddy, his white suit splashed with red. His first words upon seeing Jason, "Oh, I see the Lazarus pit was metaphorical. How cute." The fight was fast. Blades, laughing gas, flashbangs. Wally moved like lightning, disarming traps before they sprung. Jason fought like a ghost in a war zone, silent, brutal, exact. But the Joker knew how to push buttons. He whispered Jason's dead mother's name, taunted him with photos of the explosion site, lied about other children he'd killed just for fun. Jason pressed the Joker against a wall, bloodied crowbar in hand, full circle. The old Jason, the one from the original timeline, would have done it. But this Jason stopped. Breathing heavy, he dropped the weapon. "You don't get to live in my head anymore." And that was it. The Joker laughed even as he passed out from a flash-induced concussion. But Jason had already walked away. Batman had watched from the shadows, testing Jason again. This time, he didn't just approve, he accepted. Jason wasn't a weapon anymore. He was a guardian. That night, back in the Batcave, Bruce unlocked one of the display cases that once held Tim Drake's unused gear and placed Jason's Mockingbird mask inside. "You've earned it," Bruce said. Jason didn't say thank you, he just nodded and walked away, because he wasn't done yet. Time passes in Gotham differently. Victories don't shine, they bruise, they scar. But sometimes, in the quiet between tragedies, something beautiful roots itself in the cracks. Jason Todd had once been the kid Batman couldn't save. Now, he was the man Gotham couldn't ignore. Wearing his full Mockingbird suit, dark graphite armor laced with lightweight Kevlar, flexible utility gauntlets, and a stark white V design cutting across his chest, Jason had become a symbol. Not of fear, not of vengeance, but of survival, of enduring where others broke. He moved through the city like a ghost of justice, targeting gang networks Batman's brute force couldn't infiltrate, dismantling underground tech rings with Wally's intel. He didn't just fight crime, he quieted it, systematically, compassionately when he could, and without compromise when he couldn't. The Bat family began to change around him. Barbara Gordon, having taken inspiration from Jason's journey, returned to the streets, not as Batgirl, but under a new mantle, Oracle Prime. Equal parts strategist and field operative, she started working in tandem with Jason on high-risk intel runs. The two operated as co-leads on several League-sanctioned Black Ops missions in war-torn zones, where their blend of precision and information warfare turned the tide against arms dealers and meta-traffickers. Nightwing, once the ideal Robin, found himself impressed, and a little haunted, by how far Jason had come. The two had long conversations over rooftop edges, comparing scars like old veterans, trading stories of times they let anger win, but Jason no longer bristled at the mention of his past. He had processed it, transcended it. The crowbar was no longer a symbol of pain. It was a reminder, one he kept, ironically, mounted on the wall of his hideout like a museum piece. Its plaque read, "A tool, not a weapon, not anymore." And Bruce Wayne, he had changed too. No longer cloaked in the bottomless guilt of Jason's death. He was more open to the League, to Alfred, even to himself. He wasn't softer. Gotham never let him be. But the weight of tragedy had lifted from his shoulders. He called Wally's son once in front of Alfred. No one corrected him. And when Jason led his own missions, Bruce didn't hover. He trusted him now, the way a general trusts his finest lieutenant, to make the call that saves lives. Meanwhile, Wally West continued to move between cities and timelines, but Gotham remained a gravitational pull he never fully escaped. Jason was his tether. When the rest of the world moved too fast, politically, cosmically, personally, Jason brought Wally back to Earth. In turn, Wally helped Jason stay aloft, reminding him that hope wasn't weakness, that humor wasn't indulgence, that love, even scarred love, still mattered. In a particularly cinematic moment during a Justice League summit, Jason joined Wally as Gotham's special operations consultant. Aquaman, skeptical. Diana quietly intrigued. Superman nodded once and said, "We've heard about you." Jason didn't smile, but Wally did, a lot. But the final test of Jason's growth came on a night Gotham tried to break again. The Joker escaped Arkham again. And this time, he targeted not Jason, but Sheila Haywood, alive, working in Gotham's free clinic, now using her second chance to help others. Joker lured her into an abandoned hospital, turning the entire structure into a twisted funhouse with gas leaks, hallucinogenic chemicals, and puppets sewn from stolen hospital gowns. It was all a sick joke, a callback to the woman he'd once tortured, a sick reminder of the boy he thought had died in that Ethiopian warehouse. Jason didn't wait. He went in alone, not because he was reckless, but because he knew Joker wanted him, and this time, Mockingbird would decide how the story ended. What unfolded was less a battle and more a psychological war. Joker whispered regrets into Jason's comms, played clips of their past encounter, goaded him to cross the line. But Jason didn't. He used Joker's ego against him, tricked him into triggering a gas explosion that sealed him inside a panic room, unconscious but alive. When Batman arrived, it was already over. Sheila survived. Jason didn't even stay to speak with her. He disappeared back into the shadows, wings of his suit slicing through the fog like twin blades of mercy. In the aftermath, as Gotham resumed its uneasy peace, Wally and Jason met atop the GCPD signal tower, where Gordon's new holographic bat signal quietly spun into the skyline. "Still don't know what your symbol means," Wally said, nodding to the V-shaped crest on Jason's suit. Jason crossed his arms. "Neither do I. I just know it doesn't stand for pain anymore." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching Gotham below, its heart still pulsing, still fragile, but still beating. Years pass. Jason, now in his late 20s, sits in a small hideout above a refurbished theater. On his desk lies a collection of old case files, mission logs, and a photo. He's laughing in it. Wally's arm slung around him mid-joke. Alfred snapped it years ago. Below it, in Jason's handwriting, "Not all heroes need to outrun death. Some just need to arrive in time." Behind him, a new trainee stands in full field gear, nervous and determined. "Call me Mockingbird," Jason says to him, extending a gloved hand. "Let's make sure the next kid doesn't have to be saved the way I was." And that is going to be it for What If Wally West Flash saved Jason Todd. Now, what did you think of this alternate scenario? I really do want to give Ian Coyne a massive shout out for not only becoming a monthly watcher on the YouTube channel, but for also collaborating with me on this particular episode. And I really do love the ideas of Jason becoming a different hero known as Mockingbird. I think it's just such a really cool and alternate take on the storyline. But that being said, if you guys do want to support the YouTube channel, I would highly recommend clicking that join button and becoming a YouTube member, or checking out the Patreon, as we have different behind the scenes tiers. But that being said, if you can't, it's totally fine. We really appreciate all the comments, the support, everything in between, and I can't thank you guys enough, so it really does mean a lot to me here on the MissedThePart YouTube channel. But that being said, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. I will continue seeing you in the Flash Week. Take care and have a fantastic day. Peace out.